Jean is a designer who goes to the hospital for a chest checkup when she suddenly realizes that the doctor attending to her is her first high school love, Dinran. This makes her very nervous, so once the checkup is over, she grabs her prescription and rushes out of the office, forgetting her bra. Upon arriving at her apartment, she can't find anything, so she calls her mother, who informs her that they will now be living in the same building as her boyfriend because they are getting married soon. Fortunately, her mother had left a suitcase with clothes, so she gets dressed and goes to meet her mother's boyfriend. At the new place, she discovers that her mother's future husband has a son who is a doctor named Dinran. At first, Jean doesn't believe it's the same Dinran until she sees a photo that confirms it. Making up an excuse, she tries to leave, but unfortunately, Dinran arrives, and they bump into each other. Minutes later, we see them both in pain as they argue about the collision. Jean's mother asks why they don't get along, to which Jean responds that they hate each other. It's revealed that at their high school graduation party, Jean confessed her feelings to Dinran, but he rejected her, saying he didn't want to be part of her boring life. In the present, Jean tells their parents that although she hates Dinran, she won't stand in the way of their marriage. Jean then leaves, followed by her mother, who asks her to make an effort to get along with Dinran. The next day, she goes to Dinran's house to make peace. Dinran finds a bag with a bra Jean left in his office. Just as he takes it out, she enters his room and thinks he's a pervert. To make matters worse, the bra gets tangled in Dinran's sleeve, and his father sees it, accusing him of having dirty hobbies and leaves, which results in Dinran getting a severe scolding from his father. Jean tells her friend Lulu about everything that happened and then goes on a blind date with a guy named Sean. Minutes later, Lulu also leaves and meets a guy named Key on the way, who falls in love with her at first sight, and they exchange numbers. Happy, Key tells his best friend, who turns out to be Dinran. Hearing his story, Dinran recalls their school days, revealing that in high school, Jean and Dinran were neighbors and went to school together, which made them fall in love with each other. Jean openly expressed her feelings by giving Dinran a shirt embroidered with both their names. Dinran showed his feelings with small gestures that Jean didn't notice, like arranging to be next to her in a yearbook photo until a classmate named Shu got between them, which upset Jean. Seeing this, Dinran gave Shu a little push as he also wanted to be beside Jean. In the present, Dinran realizes his father created a family chat to invite Jean and her mother to dinner. Jean replies that she can't go because she has a date, making Dinran jealous. Arriving home, Dinran takes the bag with the bra to throw it away until he sees Jean arriving with Sean, seizing the opportunity to get back at her for making him look like a pervert. He innocently hands her the bag. Jean pulls out the bra, surprising Sean, to which she quickly explains that they are step-siblings and asks him not to think badly of her. The next night, Jean invites Sean over for dinner, making Dinran jealous. Meanwhile, Lulu goes on a date and ends up having a passionate night. After Sean leaves, Dinran asks Jean if she likes Sean, but she angrily tells him to mind his own business and ignore her as he did in the past. The next day, Dinran receives Jean's medical exams and finds out she has a tumor, quickly informing her that she needs surgery and offering his support. Not wanting to worry her mother, Jean asks Dinran not to tell her about the operation. With his help, they invent an excuse for her hospitalization. Outside, they meet Sean, who takes Jean to the hospital. That night, Jean tells Dinran that she is scared of the operation because her father died in one. Hearing this, Dinran promises that everything will be fine and writes words of encouragement on her hand, comforting her. The surgery is a success, and with Dinran's help, Jean recovers gradually. One day, her mother video calls, and worried that she might find out, Jean puts on a shirt and leaves the room. Outside, she meets Dinran, who takes her to the rooftop and helps her fake various voices as her mother believes she is on a business trip. Once the call ends, Jean confesses to Dinran that she likes the idea of them becoming family, and they agree to get along. The next morning, Jean struggles to put on her sock, and Dinran kindly helps her, sharing a moment of eye contact. However, the moment is interrupted by Lulu, who came to visit. That night, we learn that on graduation day, Dinran was going to confess to Jean using a notebook in which he had written his feelings but didn't do it for some reason. The next day, Jean returns home and later meets Sean, who apologizes for not visiting her in the hospital. She tells him not to worry as they are not dating, but Sean ends up confessing his love and asks her to be his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Dinran learns that Sean is going to confess to Jean and hurriedly goes to find her, but sees her hugging Sean, returning home very sad. On the other hand, Key asks Lulu to be his girlfriend, but she rejects him, saying she is not looking for a serious relationship, leaving him heartbroken. That night, Jean asks Dinran what to use to remove the operation scars, and he suggests a cream. She then tries to ask him a medical question a friend had when she found out Jean had a doctor stepbrother, but Dinran gets angry and tells her they are not siblings. Disappointed, Jean says that if he was going to act that way, he shouldn't have been kind in the hospital, giving her false hopes. Sadly, Dinran responds that she has no right to say that and mentions graduation day. It's revealed that the reason Dinran didn't confess to Jean was that he overheard a conversation where Jean told Shu that she would become Dinran's girlfriend just to annoy her. This made Dinran believe Jean didn't love him and only wanted to use him, which is why he coldly rejected her. In the present, Jean tells him never to mention the graduation party again because what she regrets most in life is confessing her feelings that day. She then goes home, crying. Days later, Dinran's father gives Jean a box that his son had left for her, which contains a cream for her scar. Touched by the gesture, Jean returns home, where she receives a call from her boss, scolding her for taking medical leave, and she quits due to his complaints. Her mother suggests she go on vacation to their villa, which she accepts, unaware that Dinran has also gone to the same place. At night, Jean goes to sleep, not realizing Dinran is there until morning when they both scream in surprise. They call their parents, who tell them to use the time together to get along. At breakfast, it's revealed that Dinran came to the villa for work and that it was Jean's mother who invited him to stay. Minutes later, Lulu arrives, having come to visit Jean and also to get away from Ki, but unfortunately, she runs into him as he came to see Dinran. They start arguing as Lulu blames Ki for falling in love with her, saying love never works, using Jean and Dinran as an example. Hearing this, Dinran talks to Lulu, revealing the truth about graduation day. Shu was upset when she found out Jean was going to confess to Dinran and insulted her, so Jean, angry, responded that she would become Dinran's girlfriend just to annoy Shu. Dinran only heard this last part and rejected Jean. But that wasn't all. Shu intentionally fell into the pool and borrowed Dinran's shirt that Jean had gifted him, then went to Jean to tease her. Learning this, Dinran realizes how foolish he was and apologizes to Jean, who tells him that she rejected Sean and that they decided to remain friends. The next day, the girls attend an alumni reunion where Jean ends up getting drunk. At the party, one of her classmates speaks ill of Din Ram, and Jean defends him. The video of this incident is shared with Din Ram, who becomes concerned and goes to look for Jean, who is intoxicated. Meanwhile, Ki does the same and takes Lulu home. On the way, Din Ram stops the car so that Jean can get some fresh air, and they reminisce about their youth, which brings out their feelings, and Jean kisses him. On the other hand, Lulu realizes what a good guy Ki is, so she opens up to him and reveals that years ago she had a boyfriend she loved so much that she endured his mistreatment until one day she finally opened her eyes and broke up with him. Due to this bad experience, she decided not to fall in love again, fearing that love would blind her once more. But this time, she wants to make an exception and give it a chance, so Ki happily kisses her. The next day, Jean wakes up with a slight hangover and doesn't remember what happened the night before. Later, Din Ram and Jean visit their old school, where she slips, and he catches her, bringing them so close that he kisses her. Just then, Jean's aunt arrives, and in surprise, she pushes Din Ram into the water. Later, Jean falls asleep and dreams of entering the table, which annoys her because she doesn't want to get her hopes up since he hasn't formally confessed his feelings. The next day, Jean meets Shu, who invites Din Ram to go out, but he declines and leaves with Jean. At home, he confesses that if he hadn't misunderstood his conversation with Shu, he would have confessed his feelings at the graduation party because he has been in love with her for a long time. Hearing this, Jean hesitates and is about to say something when they are interrupted by Lulu's arrival. The next morning, Jean tells Lulu that Din Ram confessed to her, but despite being happy about it, her pride doesn't allow her to accept it, so she decides to return to the city and distance herself from Din Ram, as he still has to stay in the village for another week. Jean teams up with Lulu, and they start creating their own designs for their new clothing store. As the days pass, and since Jean often works late, Din Ram brings her dinner. They talk, and he asks her to give him a chance, but she rejects him. The next morning, Jean tells Din Ram that it's best to remain friends because their parents will soon get married, making them a family. Din Ram asks if that is the only reason she rejects him, to which she replies yes, because if they become a couple, people will talk badly about them. Hearing this, Din Ram asks if she doesn't like him, as if she says she doesn't, he will stop insisting. He gets so close that he almost kisses her, but she pushes him away with a stomp. Not willing to give up, Din Ram does everything he can to win her over, bringing her breakfast, sending balloons, and inviting her to the movies, but she continues to reject him. The next day, Din Ram's father tells Jean that he is going on a trip with his mother and leaves her a fake cockroach to scare his son when he bothers her. Jean happily goes to Din Ram's room to leave the cockroach, where she finds his notebook and reads all the sweet things he wrote about her, realizing how much Din Ram loves her. Just then, she gets a call informing her that Din Ram had an accident, so she hurriedly goes to find him. She takes him home and finally confesses that she likes him a lot but feels sad because from the beginning, she was the only one who expressed her feelings, and he didn't. Hearing this, Din Ram admits that he was foolish for not doing so earlier and apologizes for rejecting her, as he has always loved her and will continue to do so since he hasn't fallen in love with anyone else in the past 10 years. Happy to hear this, she decides to give him a chance, and their relationship begins. They go through the notebook together until they hear Din Ram's father's voice, who has returned because he forgot his ID. Jean quickly hides until Din Ram's father leaves. Once alone, he suggests telling their parents about their relationship, but she asks to wait until after the wedding. That night, they celebrate their relationship with their friends, and after finishing the movie, Jean invites Din Ram to her house. The next morning, she prepares breakfast for her boyfriend and finds the sweet surprise that he did the same for her. Din Ram goes to work at the hospital for several days but calls her every night to remind her how much he loves her. The days pass, and they become very affectionate, especially Din Ram, who kisses her passionately, and she responds in kind, spending the night together. Their relationship progresses well, although they pretend to get along poorly in front of their parents to avoid being discovered. Meanwhile, Lulu becomes pregnant and nervously tells Ki Fei, who is overjoyed. Jean and Din Ram continue their relationship in secret, but it becomes increasingly difficult as one day, Jean's mother almost catches them and gets angry with her daughter for not introducing her boyfriend. This causes an argument, so a sad Jean goes to Din Ram for comfort, not realizing her mother is following her, resulting in their discovery. The next day, when Jean's mother questions them, they have no choice but to admit they are in a relationship. Jean confesses to her mother that she didn't say anything because she feared she would no longer want to marry Din Ram's father and would sacrifice her happiness. But to her surprise, both parents are happy about the news and even suggest a double wedding. So, days later, we see the happy couples already married, celebrating their commitment. The next day, Jean packs her bags, and along with Ki Fei and Lulu, they go to celebrate their honeymoon in the village where their love story began.